and welcome to this episode 182 of Frame and Reference. You're about to drop into a conversation between me, Kenny McMillan, and my friend Chris Ray, the owner of Motion Clubhouse. Enjoy. I tried to do like a home NAS off of my router, you know?
What's that?
A network attached storage.
Oh, okay.
Like a RAID, but attached to the network so that you could
Access it.
Access it from like any device on the network. It was essentially a 1 terabyte SSD that I just plugged in, and it worked, but even that was like clunkier than it needed to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think Martin, my business partner, has stuff like that. You've met Martin, right?
No, only online.
Okay, yeah. So Martin has some sort of setup like that, and then I just use the OWC whatever 160 terabyte thing where I'm like, I'm just putting everything on there and I'll access it when I plug it in. So
yeah. I made a God. You have to have a lot of. I thought I had a lot of footage, but
so what sucks is I have 2 of those units, 2 8-bay 160 terabyte units. Both of them are full.
Yep.
Another one, and I still have. I'm looking at 20 more drives I need to dump.
Yeah,
every single thing I ever shot.
I don't delete things. I keep it all.
Yep.
I actually, what's funny is I have my own little RAID, basically a little DAS, direct attached storage, and it was like a mess of drives. They weren't all the same, so they're like different sizes and stuff. So they were, but I replaced all of them with the max that thing can handle, which is a 20 terabyte drive. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5 20 terabyte drives in it with no parity, which is scary. But I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have so much more space. And I don't have like even close to double the space. I have, it was like an extra 40 terabytes. I was like, oh.
Luckily prices are going down. I mean, for what I have right now, it probably would have been like $100,000 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty crazy.
Do you mostly film? Is it like, no, I guess you got that C7, C80, you got.
So I've got C80 and C400 right now, but we're testing out a few Sonys and trying to figure out, like, do we switch to FX6? Do we go to the Sony route? Do we stay Canon? Like, I don't know. Everything I see out of the Sonys, I really like from Sony users.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always like that. Is the grass greener on there? So you kind of want what you don't have. And I'm like,
yeah,
should we go Sony? Like, just to make it exciting. And we have a relationship with Sony too. They've been really supportive. And so is Canon, but it's just like, which one do we want? We're not like stuck to either, except, I have every Canon lens they make. So
yeah. I honestly, the problem that I have with Sony, if you could even call it a problem, has nothing to do with them because their products are great. Mm-hmm. It's that I'm going to close my email because that just absolutely threw me off. You have to be in Dallas. Sony is so popular. Like, their marketing team is so excellent that now I can't even tell. Like, if any, you see, especially like with FX3 stuff, it's like, is this a great cinematographer or a great colorist? Because so many people are using Sony cameras, we're no longer seeing the results of that camera. We're seeing the result of the individual. And at that point, does it matter?
Yeah, I'll say it's pretty hard for there to be a bad camera out there, but I would say that, like, the coloring has made such a difference, and everybody that, I guess it's like somehow Sony got all the colorists, it feels like, because everything I see, I'm like, damn.
It's because they're on YouTube.
Yeah.
Everyone who owns a Sony is a YouTuber.
But it's funny because, like, Martin is more of a color nerd and like spec nerd than I am, and he'll like color stuff, and I'm like, hey man, if you told me this was this camera, I'd be like, oh, cool, I believe you. If you told me it's this camera, I'd believe you. Like, it's you could be like, hey, this is FX6. I'd be like, oh, that looks great. You could be like, this is Canon. I'd be like, I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't be like, no, that's a Black Magic. Like, they're all so good.
Yeah, at this point, I am almost exclusively, with very little exception, I'm like, if the body is giving you what you need, that's it. Yeah. So usually that comes down to, like, even mount, I don't really care about, because almost everything can be adapted to whatever. Although they do make, I will say, because Sony is so popular, there's so many E-mount lenses out there. But I shoot mostly PL anyway, or like EF. I do have it, but or like built-in NDs. I will not be buying a camera that doesn't have built-in NDs.
That's a big rule of mine for sure too.
Yeah, but that sensor in the C80 C400 is nice.
It is nice. We ran some test. We've been kind of bummed on the image coming out of the C400, so that's why we were thinking about switching to Sony. But we did some tests, and Martin figured out if you shoot at the base ISO, and then as long as you shoot below that.
Yep.
So,
I shot a commercial and learned that off rip because we were shooting kind of late at night, and I was like, what?
What camera was it on?
C80.
Oh, okay, great, good. That's good to know.
Yeah. And it was, I ran a few tests as well because I knew we were going to be shooting at night. And I was like, yeah, just whatever ISO you don't shoot at the base, shoot below the base. And I should have known that because I do that with my C70 and my C500. Not really the C70 doesn't necessarily need it.
We didn't know that. And that's, we have a shoot tonight. And so I'll be starting today with that rule. But Martin was like, hey, I got a good image out of this. And I'm like, just shoot below it.
Yeah.
Like,
well, the trick that Canon doesn't tell you, and I had a guy tell me this in public, like in a recorded interview, so it's not like a secret. But the Canon sensors, I don't know if this is true with, I assume it's not true with the 80 and the 400, but probably is. The Canon sensors, all the cinema sensors, their base ISO is like 160.
That's crazy.
They say that their base ISO is 800 because that's where you're going to get the best highlight and shadow details simultaneously. And I noticed with the C80, doing that trick of shooting lower doesn't affect your highlights in an appreciable way. Like you don't blow out like suddenly like 2 stops sooner, like you might on a C200 or a C300 or something. But yeah, so if you want like the best image out of the older Canon cinema cameras, technically shoot the lowest possible ISO. I usually shoot around 400, honestly.
Yeah, that's what Martin was saying to do. So yeah, I'm excited for it because the C400 body and the C80 body is like I'm stoked on it. It feels great.
Yeah, and I like what the changes they've made to the monitor hinge, because on the 70 it's a little sloppy.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's good times.
Yeah.
What have you been up to? So I guess I'll have to say you were on this. You were like, I don't know, guest number 12 on this podcast, and then the internet took a shit on both of us, and so it never went out. But that was like 4 years ago. What have you been up to in the past 4 years?
Oh man, so. I guess, did I leave DC Shoes? Was I with DC Shoes?
You were still at DC at the time, yeah.
Yes, I left DC. We started Motion Clubhouse. Martin and I left. We took Sam, that was also in the films department there. So we kind of cleaned out the films department and went and did our own thing. And we've worked with a ton of cool brands. And we fell into the podcast space, which was not the plan at all.
Right.
It was funny.
You do Huberman, right?
Yeah, we do the Huberman podcast. We also work on like Rick Rubin's podcast, Tetragrammaton.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, so we help with that stuff. And it's funny because we were doing a ton of music stuff around that time with big bands. And when we were at DC, I was like, hey, you know what? Like if we leave, we have enough work to keep us busy with just the music stuff. And dude, we left DC and didn't get a single music job again with them. It was so funny that it never even lined up. And then this whole other thing happened. But it's just, we were very, very good about just being like, okay, let's just go with the flow. Let's see what happens. And because we had a whole plan, which we can go into of like, we're going to leave. We're not going to do any editing. We're only going to film. We're going to hand them the footage. We're going to have freedom to like not do 20 edits. Then we fell into doing all editing. And it was just like, oh, whoa, like, well, this wasn't the plan, but we were very good about being like, it's okay, that's not the plan, because we're going to figure it out as we go. And we've been super happy. But the Huberman thing is like the main thing for us.
Yeah.
We partnered with Polar Pro, did a set of NDs with them. We've done a lot of their launch campaigns and stuff. It's been awesome.
Yeah. One thing that I've always found fascinating about your guys' work, especially at like Motion Clubhouse, is I feel like this is going to sound kind of like an insult, and I trust me, it's not. Like every influencer in the world would love to be at the level that you guys are at, because it seems like from the outside, if I'm making educated guesses, it's like you're just pulling in brand deals, but they're all really good ones, and you're getting work off of them. You know, it's not just like here's some free, like you made a fucking ND filter. You know, like it's
Yeah.
you're getting the good. You know, and as your work is concerned, like getting promoted by Canon and whoever, having being at Film Tools, like those are all like higher level trust level stuff versus like I got this new lens.
Well, we've been the main thing was that we always worked with the brands that we were fans of, so we've never really jumped around. So it's like Small HD, Teradek, Wooden Camera, like all the creative solution companies that we've always worked with and partnered with, GoPro, like all these companies, we use those cameras, we use all their equipment, and that was key because it's like we don't want to just jump around. Like when we go on, we shoot our camera products and things like that. It's like that's what we truly use. But if I'm sitting there and I'm posting a Wooden Camera product and then like till to the next week, I just don't think there's any like there's nothing authentic there, right?
Right.
But you're just jumping around and people see, oh, this is just, whether that's just you're getting paid or this, you can't believe that person's word if they're promoting. Now there's people out there that are doing reviews and things like that, and that's great, and they have a lot of knowledge and they can compare to other models. But like we're all about like the true partnership of like how can we work together. And again, like you said, we're very lucky to work with the best ones.
Yeah, well, and that kind of thing sort of comes from the skate world, doesn't that? Where like you get a sponsor and you rock with them, especially if they're like a shoe you wear, a board you ride, or whatever trucks you.
Yeah,
like.
I mean the camera industry, just like the skate industry, it's not that big. Everybody knows each other. There ain't that many companies. So if like you're jumping around all the time, like you're the guy that jumps around. How many times would I jump around to all these different brands? We have switched a couple brands, partnerships and things like that, and that's just because of a lot of companies that work with each other and like, hey, come work with us or come work with this. So like we were with Tiffin before, and then Polo Pro, we started like to do some actual work with them, and we were just like, man, like we're clicking with these guys. We really like what they're doing, and so we were like, you know what, we'll switch here. And then we got more involved in like the product side, and that's how we ended up getting our own line of 4x5 filters, which they had never made 4x5 filters, for the cinema world. And we were like, we want this. We did a lot of testing, and they were like totally supportive of it. So it was awesome to see those come out, and obviously have our logo on there is insane.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that's cool as shit.
Yeah.
I had a thought and then it ran away. I did want to ask about the Huberman thing before we got past it, which was just obviously, if people don't know, it's kind of a self-optimization kind of guy. Is there anything that you've learned filming all of the, because even fans of his probably don't listen to every single episode, whereas you're there for every single episode. Is there anything you've learned that you've applied to your filmmaking life, whether that be, actual like work or changing the way that you approach this as a job?
I mean, definitely my health overall, right? Because I think that I always prioritized work before my health or my family. So for me, it was always like work is my life, the only thing that matters. But working with Andrew and the whole crew and listening to the podcast, it's like you quickly learn, like if you don't have your health, this isn't going to last long. You're not going to be able to actually work as well. So it's like, eating right, because when we're on set, like, dude, what's crazy is that most of the time they're like, here's pizza.
I was about to say, I hate the pizza. They bring the pizza, and it's not even good pizza. It's like Domino's every time.
Yeah. So they'll be like, here's pizza, and I remember like I had gotten like a health coach. I was working with this company out of Vegas called Clay, and I was doing a bunch of video work for them, and they were like, oh, like let us just like, you want to test some of your, I guess, health life. So I started doing some tests with them, and I was working with their coach Andrew, and he was basically like, keep a food log of everything you have, right? And he's like, hey, I noticed you had pizza twice this week. And I was like, yeah, I was on a shoot and I did this, and then I went on another shoot, and that's all I had. And he like looked at me crazy, and he's like, why don't you just use a snack bag? And I was like, a snack bag? I never thought about that. And he's like,
well, like when you're a kid.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't think about that. And he's like, you don't have to eat the pizza. And I was like, you're right. So it was a cool like experience, obviously, with Andrew, and then like meeting people in the health space. It's snowballed into, you just, I don't know, I don't feel as like tired anymore. And I feel like carrying all these cases or like
Yep.
things. Like it all connects to each other, which has been awesome. But sleep is important. I used to believe that I should stay up all night and edit and not get any sleep. And now for me, I'm like, dude, sleep is important. Like Andrew will be like, he doesn't ask how you're doing, he asks how you're sleeping. Getting sunlight, crazy important. Like we have an episode that we have been editing this week, and it's released on this Monday, which I don't know when this episode comes out, but
this will be like the end of March. So yeah, it's out.
Yeah, so go back and watch this. I can't remember the guy's last name, but it's Andrew and this guy Roger. And anybody who wants to see it, just DM me. But it's like all about sunlight and the benefits of sunlight, and it'll just blow your mind on how much or how important that is. It's pretty wild.
Well, we as much as people hate to think it, we are animals. We are a result of we are the universe experiencing itself, as it were. Yep. To when we don't do natural shit, bad things happen.
Yeah. But I mean, the biggest thing too is like working with Andrew and him being so concerned about everybody's health, which is like, it's not a thing he's just putting on. Like it's he's really concerned about helping people. And obviously he's a friend of mine too, but for him to be looking out for us and being like, making sure that we're getting rest instead of just working 24 hours a day. Like that's pretty unheard of from anybody that's actually paying you as well.
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, to echo your point, about a year ago, I realized that I was like getting gassed, like walking upstairs with a camera case, and then like I'd see photos of myself and be like, oh, Jesus. So I started going to, there's this great gym here in LA called Allegiant. And they've got 3 locations. And they're like, right now they just switched out coaches. That's the strength and conditioning coach for the Pacers is my coach, and they like make sure that you're not getting injured and stuff. They'll do like body comp tests and stuff. They have a path where they'll focus on your nutrition, but that's costs more, so I don't do it. But yeah, literally everything you just said is like everything they talk about and everything I've been thinking about for the past year, because it's so true.
Yeah, I was at this weird point where I wasn't like crazy overweight. I wasn't necessarily in shape. Like you said, I was gassed out. If you told me to like run around the block, I'd be dying, Yeah. Where I was just like, man, this is so, it's just, I had the decision to make. And I'm like, do I fix this before it gets bad? Or because I'm not going to stay the same. As you get older, it just gets harder, right?
Uh-huh.
I was like, what do I do? What should I do? I wasn't happy with myself. Like where I literally thought about it every 15 minutes throughout the day. And if people that know me were like, you're crazy. Like, you're not this huge dude. But I was like, yeah, but I'm not happy with who I am.
Right? I feel huge. That's all that matters,
I'd see photos and I'd be like, is this the camera? Or is this, like, do I really look like that? And so I started like working out like crazy, and I didn't post it. I didn't tell people. And then I started to run into people, and people would pull me aside and be like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what's going on here? So it was pretty cool to go like 6 months out not people. And then finally you just wait for somebody to be like, to notice. And you're just like, oh, thank you. It's been hard. You have put in a lot of work, but obviously processed foods and crap like that, that's like a huge difference. It's like not, I was sitting there eating chips and Cheez-Its and all that stuff while editing all day. And now I'm like, I get a phone call. I'm like, oh, I'm going to walk around the block and take this call. So,
well, and also to your point about like, if you asked me to run around the block, the other thing about being out of shape, or at least not in the process of like going to the gym, is it's a mental block, right? Once you break past that mental block of like, I don't want to work out, or I don't want to exert myself or whatever, other things become easier. You stop thinking in the I can't do it kind of thing.
Yeah, it becomes a part of your life. Where before it was like a task, like it was homework, it was a to-do thing.
Yeah.
And I started to understand it, but also I wasn't educated. I wasn't educated on food, and I wasn't educated on any gym practices. I'd walk in a gym and I'd be like, I don't know, that machine is cool. So yeah, I'd be like, okay, cool. But I started to, using apps and talking to people, and obviously working with Andrew and him training me. So it was like, okay, this is how you're supposed to do it. I understand it. But then I remember like, I felt like it clicked. I was like, oh, this is just my life. This isn't I gotta wake up and go to the gym. This sucks. So that once you can turn that switch on, then it's like it's a game changer.
Yeah, for me, it was like, I think 3 or 4 months. I hadn't worked out in 10 years, and it took about 4 months of like, and every morning I would wait, every single morning I would wake up and start coming up with excuses that I would then tell, lies that I would tell the coach, sorry, I can't come in. Something happened. And then after making up enough lies, I would go, all right, time to go. And I'd get up out of bed and go.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's, I mean, but you have to just do it, unfortunately. So now I'm like, if I miss a day, I'm bummed. So
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting to hear that come from your perspective, because like I'm, I snowboard every winter, but that's 2 months out of the year that I'm quote unquote an athlete. Yeah. But you're a medalist skateboarder. Where did that? Have you still skate?
So I still go to the skate parks and stuff, and that's pretty much it. But I'm not in the streets as much as I used to be. So I'll just cruise out with my friends, and I still do stuff with GoPro. So I'm out filming clips in the parks and stuff, and sometimes in the streets, but mostly just having fun at skate parks.
Yeah, because that what is that the Eric Costin joke of I used to skate?
Yeah, yep, yeah. Those are my friends that do storied skateboarding. So the producer of DC Shoes, when I was with them, him and his brother went and started that company, and they did the whole I used to skate thing, which is pretty funny.
Yeah. I'm definitely in that game. Well, actually, that's why I started snowboarding, because I just could not ollie for the life of me as a kid. I was like,
yeah. What's funny is I never thought, like, growing up, skating for the majority of my life, and then now being 41, I never thought I would suck at skating this much. Like, now if I skate, you'll be like, dude, there's no way that you skated the majority of your life. It just gets hard. It gets harder to jump. It gets harder on your body. So it's a lot different.
I pulled my neck doing a pull-up yesterday.
Yeah, you can. I mean, at our age, you can get hurt sleeping. So
yep. Oh, that's the worst. That's what I tell like college students. I'm like, just get a pillow, invest in a nice pillow. Yeah. With like some structure, because one day you're gonna, pull. Yeah.
Yeah, you spend half your life in bed, so you might as well.
Well, and you know what? I was looking at the analytics for this podcast like the other day, and most people are 25 to like 45. It's like 25 to 35 or something like that. So they're the people that need to hear about pillows and health. Talk to me about the DC Shoes, because you were there for what, like 10 years?
Yeah, I actually left on the 10-year day anniversary.
Because that is one of those kind of like, in the sports industry, that is one of the monoliths. Like if they go down, the entire industry is probably gone down.
Yeah. It was a rad place to work, because, I grew up as a DC fan, and DC was always amazing because of the content that they put out, right? Like when people talk about DC, it's kind of like the Red Bull formula in a way, right? When you think about Red Bull, you're like, what's so rad about Red Bull? You don't sit here and everybody's like, oh, the drinks just give you so much energy. It's usually like, oh, they threw a guy out of space, and they did this, and they did this event, they sponsor this team. Well, they always had such a rad skate team. They always had rad categories, and they always did crazy videos that were Red Bull style and things that other companies weren't doing. So to be a part of that for 10 years was absolutely incredible. And they were huge supporters of my whole journey and my career of like doing freelance. Like, I was allowed to do freelance the whole time I was there. So
that's nice.
I was out there getting experience with everybody and meeting a lot of people. So when we decided, hey, we're going to go start our own agency, we're going to do Motion Clubhouse, I went to the films team and I was like, guys, it's time. We're going to do this. I don't know exactly what this is going to take, but I do know that as the things come along and the questions, we're going to figure it out as we go. But I think we're ready, and I'm going to do this. And I actually didn't expect anybody to kind of like join me, but the entire crew ended up just leaving and doing it. And it's been amazing. It was the best decision we ever made.
Which also, in some cases, doing that is illegal. So check your local laws to take an entire department. What were some of those first? Because I've weirdly enough, I got an email about this like 2 days ago. But I never really had like a normal job. I freelanced my entire life. What were some of those initial sort of things that popped up that were different for you, going from a working, whatever, 9 to 5, whatever you want to call it, working for a company versus working for yourself?
Well, one, if we were on a shoot for DC and things didn't go well, we all still got paid, right? The losses didn't come out of our checks. So that was a huge one. So now when you're walking into a shoot and we're doing our own thing, we're the ones responsible, right? So if we're hiring out a crew or a bunch of people and the client doesn't want to pay for 2 to 3 months, we have to pay all these people out ourselves, right? So we didn't have that financial backing that a big corporate company has. We didn't have access to a company card that magically got paid by somebody every month, right? We had
didn't have a limit.
We didn't have a limit. We had company vehicles. We had an office that was fully paid for. We had a creative team that we can lean on if we needed something else, and pretty much unlimited budget because we were able to outsource and get help whenever we needed. So that was probably the biggest challenge, was the sense of responsibility. But working with Martin, who's the co-founder of Motion Clubhouse, we both were on the same page. We're like, you know what? We're going to make sure we take care of everybody else. We're going to make sure that people always get paid. We'll be the last ones. We're going to make sure we can do this. And we were very fortunate, to not really like miss a beat when we left. And you hear the stories of like, oh, if you leave and you work for yourself, you can like make more money. And in our case, that was true.
So, that's good.
Yeah,
I was going to say you make more money, but you're also doing more jobs. You're wearing far more hats.
I'll say that, I don't know. I felt like we were doing, it was really weird. It was like a culture, a little bit of a shock at first. Cause I was like, whoa, like we're working like 2 days a week.
Way less time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, where before at DC, like it was a lot of grinding, right? Cause you're like, I was a person who was on calls with marketing. I was involved with a lot of things. And then I would edit at night because that's when the meetings were over. So I kind of felt like I was never getting a break, and that was 10 years straight. So when I started to not be on all those calls, that was huge. Like I didn't realize how many Zoom meetings I was on because they had to have a call for every single thing. And that's most corporate companies.
Everybody.
And I'm like, I'm wasting my time. So now when any company's like, hey, we got to do a call, I'm like, oh, I get like a PTSD. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to do a call. Like for real, we got to do a call about this. I don't miss any of that stuff, but that just sucked away a lot of time, a lot of creativity. Obviously, you got to have discussions. You got to talk about things. You got to make things, figure things out. But I think a lot of that time was wasted. So we had gotten a bunch of this extra time where we were like, hey, we can actually enjoy life a little bit, make more money, focus on our health, hang out as friends, and just not be working around the clock. So we were fortunate. I know it's not that way for everybody, but we were very, very fortunate. We had a lot of support from people that believed in us.
Well, I will say, I'm certainly not at that level. I work for myself in that, I'm my own boss, I guess. But all of that stuff is true. It's just you have to have the I don't know, stick-to-itiveness. You have to be a very what is the Jocko Willink thing? Discipline is freedom. Yep. If you're disciplined enough to get all the work done when you're supposed to get it done, you end up actually having a lot of free time to do the stuff that you need to do. If you're lazy like me and you put things off, it compounds and gets worse and worse. So I think that's really the main difference.
Yeah, I've always been like I struggled with this because I had a lot of people call this out in my life, but work has always been what I felt like defined my life. Which I didn't like hearing that for a long time, but then once I kind of accepted it and I stepped back and I looked at like how I was and how the way I worked, I was like, you know what? It is. That is like I truly believe like I love working hard. I love what I do, but I'm also always very cautious about who I'm working with and who I'm working for. So for me, it's like it doesn't feel like work because it's become a part of my life. So I'm never dreading any of it. And we're always, like I said, maybe we've just been lucky on who we've worked with and the support we've had. I don't know. We've been really fortunate.
Well, you're also I would make sure to give yourself some credit. You're a pleasant person to work with. I think people choose to come back to you.
I guess it's just a dream come true. And that's why it's kind of like, I got to pinch myself and be like, we're doing this. This is insane.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll text like the group thread and I'll be like, guys, this is crazy. Like we're working with Andrew Huberman. We're doing this. Like we're doing this. We have a Polar Pro filter. Like it's insane. Like we have to remind ourselves how awesome this is and not get caught up in it.
Well, and it's so fun to hear that too, because I think also exactly what you're saying. I'm just going to agree with you this whole conversation. Yeah. Having joy in what you do, I think, is incredible. I was just at the Magic Castle last night, and I was talking with some magicians, and they were talking about this like legendary dude who was so burnt out it took him like 10 years to come back to it. Where like he would, all of his friends were all magicians, and this is like top 3 in the world kind of guy, and he wouldn't even talk about magic for like 10 years, and then one day he was like, pulled out the cards or whatever. But it's, if you don't love what you're doing, like literally step back and do something completely unrelated for as long as you need to like get that spark. But it's fun to hear you say stuff, because like you shot fully flared.
Yeah, that was my dream job. I mean, dude, to work with those guys and
Spike Jonze.
Yeah. I mean, that was my dream. Again, like there's been so many layers of my career to where like I hit that one, right? And that was like, I wasn't getting paid anything really. Like I was getting like $750 a month. But to me, if you said, if you could do anything in the world at that moment, it would have been work for Lakai, work on Fully Flared with Ty Evans. Mm-hmm. That was my dream. That guy taught me how to film. I owe him so much. But like, I had so many of these check marks where it's like, go work for Transworld, make a Transworld video, check mark, like to where all these things kept happening, where I was like, well, if this is it, if this is the last check mark, my dreams came true. So I was very fortunate to just have all these check marks of just like, I can't believe this. And they're still going.
Yeah. Do you sort of I don't know what do they call it? Because I certainly don't, not mood board, vision board. Do you like write these things out, or are they more just kind of like goals in your head that like how I guess like actual I realized how firm are any of these goals that you make? Do you like write it down and go, I need to do that next, or do you just kind of take it day by day and do the work in front of you?
Yeah, I take it day by day, but it's more of like a feeling. Like I'll have this like feeling or like urge, where I'll be like, I really want to shoot fitness, but then I'll just make it happen. I'll just be like, hey, I'll reach out I'll go on Instagram and I'll find a fitness person, and I'll just be like, hey, we're gonna do this. And I'm not waiting for funding. I'm not waiting for somebody to be like, oh, here's the shoot, you can do it. Like I have such a passion for filmmaking. I trip out when people are in filmmaking and they're trying to do it for the money, or they're thinking this is a fun career. Like it's an exhausting career. And if you want to do something for the money, then like you should go to college and be a lawyer or a doctor or something that pays very well and won't drive you crazy like the film industry. But I always try to remind myself, why do I do this? Why do I have passion for this? What gets me excited? And that's, like I said, it could be like right now I have this urge to shoot a rodeo. I really want to go to a rodeo and just shoot a piece to just even post on my Instagram. I don't even care. I just want to do it.
The reason I made that face was just because like I've seen a lot of rodeo stuff. I think it's in the ether. Well, and because that's the other thing I was going to say was I think you do what I do, which is like you just kind of, I guess it's like the David Lynch thing of like being open to the ideas. Like you don't make them up. They kind of appear in front of you, and then it's up to you to go do it.
Yeah.
So if you got rodeo in the ether, you're like, you just go, that is the exact correct time to do it versus maybe next year I can schedule out some rodeo time. It's like when it hits you.
That or being like, oh, I hope a rodeo company hits me up, or I hope there's a shoot that lines up. It's like, no, like I'm just going to go do this. And then, because every time I've done that, I then get reached out to by a company that I guess like works on that. And they'll be like, hey, we saw the car commercial you did. We want to hire you for this. And I was like, oh, cool. Like that was one we just went and did because we want to get the experience. We want to see what it's like. And I'm inspired by other filmmakers. So for me, it's like, I'm very fortunate because my friends are all the exact same way, where they just get excited to do the shoot. Nobody's like, well, how much money are we going to make? And how is this going to do? It's like, dude, like, let's let the money follow in another way, right? Like we'll figure this out. And, maybe it's a pitch video. Maybe it's just something that we just do for fun. But the more experience we get behind the camera, the more experience we get editing, like that helps all of us.
Well, and something that you do that I really appreciate, which I think helps, because obviously this was a classic thing they told us in film school, which is like, you're only as good as your last job, meaning exactly what you're saying. Someone sees the gig you did before and then they hire it, which is how like people who do horror films but really want to do rom-coms never get to shoot a rom-com because they see a horror film and they go, I want you for that.
Yep.
But something that you do that I think is really great is when you do those passion gigs or stuff, it's the exact same level of quality and attention to detail as the paid gigs. So from the outside, you would never know.
Yep.
And that even if you didn't get paid for it, even if you didn't get hired for it, you just did it. You don't know the brand.
It's because we take the same approach to our paid gigs as we do as our passion projects, right? Every time we do a paid gig, I tell the crew or our friends or anything like, and even tell the client, because the client usually comes to us and they're like, we don't have to reach out for work. People usually just reach out to us and like, hey, we like what you guys do. We want to partner up and do this, which is great because usually there's some sort of relationship that's already there. But I always tell people, I'm like, I want to make something that I'm proud enough to post on my own channel. And the client always goes, exactly. That's what I want. As I want you to be so proud of it. I want the crew to be proud of it, that you guys are also going to share it. There's nothing worse than sitting there making a project and looking at each other and being like, this is the worst thing we've ever filmed. Don't tell anybody about it. We don't want anybody to know about this. That's not like, we only have a short time in life. I definitely don't want to spend it doing that.
Yeah. Unless kind of the opposite of what you're saying, unless the pay's really good.
Yeah, right.
Then you just, sometimes you take a gig. But because I always tell you, there's no shame in any job. Take.
Oh, no, totally.
But
you learn. I mean, I'd hope that everybody learns something from every single job they do.
Oh yeah. And especially the other thing too is like on a lot of those well, now this is kind of going directly against what I said, but like on those like shittier paying jobs that even are bad, 9 times out of 10 you meet someone on that set who like is also quote unquote slumming it. And then you start a relationship with them, and then maybe, you hire each other and make each other's work better later down the line.
Yeah, I remember there was a long time ago, I got hit up for a job, and I got off the phone, and I was telling my friend, Mike, I was like, oh, man, this just hit me up, and it's like a music thing, and they want to pay me $500 for the day. Like, that's crazy. And he looked at me and he goes, what are you doing tomorrow? And I was like, nothing. He goes, $500 sounds better than zero. What if you meet somebody that's awesome? And I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. So I did it. And I met amazing people that I still work with to this day. And we get paid much more on other jobs. So yeah. It's great. I think it's take a step back, look at it, evaluate, your time, but most importantly, do you want to do it? Like, does your body want to do it? Does your mind want to do it? And like really evaluate it and think about it.
Oh yeah. Cause that's another thing, right? Like 500 sounds better than zero, but also one of the biggest mistakes I see younger filmmakers making is showing up and with the attitude that gig is beneath them and not, actually trying. They're like, oh, my day rate's $1,500. You're paying me $500. Well, you're going to get a $500 effort. It's like, no, give them the $2,000 effort,
Give them the $2,000 effort. And then they call you again because you did an amazing job. They'll know why you're worth the $2,000.
Yeah. And I mean, don't let people, stomp all over you, but generally, everyone's been handed different budgets. It's not like you always have the same budget.
Yeah. But I mean, you also know, like, I think you can go with your gut. I think people got to trust their gut and like, when you're getting taken advantage of versus there like truly not being a budget. I believe like, and I didn't go to film school, but maybe they taught this in film school to every producer to put at the end of the email that we don't have a big budget for this. I don't know if that's a thing, but I've never, ever been hit up and somebody says, hey, we got a great budget.
Yeah.
It's like never happened.
It's always, this one's going to be a lot of fun. We need a few rock stars on this one. We're hoping to really partner, all this teamwork discussion.
I mean, a lot of times it's just like, I go off of how exciting and fun does it sound.
Yeah.
That's truly what it is, and if I'm working with my friends, like that right there has value to it also. But if the project sounds fun, I usually forget to even ask what the rate's going to be. Cause I'm immediately bought in. Cause I'm like, this sounds amazing. I fit perfect for this project. I know other people that are going to fit for this project. So like, let's do it and make this happen and figure it out.
Yeah. My friend Nick is a producer and he is constantly hounding me to get paid what I'm worth. because I'm so easy to please. Like if I work for some clothing company that I really like and the budget's not amazing, but they give me a bunch of like free clothing, it's really nice. Some of it's like really expensive. I'm using an exact example of mine. Like I'll take it,
No, I know. I gotta be if like Viore hits me up, I'm gonna be like, no charge. It's okay. Yeah. Like just give me the clothes. Like I spend more than my day rate on your guys' stuff. It's all good. So yeah. Yeah, you gotta, but again, like that's exciting. Like again, like Seattle Seahawks hit me up. I'd be like, oh no, you don't even have to pay me. Just bring me in. I'm doing this, So
why the Seahawks? Aren't you from NorCal?
No, I was born in Hawaii, moved to Washington State, grew up in Washington, went to NorCal, Southern Nevada, Northern California, then down here, Orange County.
Gotcha. So have you been to a Kraken game yet?
No, I only follow football, but they're my favorite hockey team because I don't follow hockey, but I'm a Seattle guy, so I go
for sure. You should definitely next time you're up there, like just go. Like I was there for 2 days. I flew in, went straight from the airport to the arena because I was a 1 day shoot that I was leaving the day of the shoot, and boy, that not only is that stadium super nice, like the food isn't even that expensive. Like food and drinks are actually reasonable for a stadium, but it's hockey's just fun to go to. But that arena specifically is amazing.
The Seattle fans is what gets me excited. So I need to make a trip up there.
Yeah. The what was it? Oh, I did have a note about. Oh no, I have too many. Now I have too many notes. All right, first one. Going into freelancing, or working for yourself, starting your own company. Are there any I guess maybe pre-production tools or software or methods of operating that you've implemented? Because I think that's something that kind of, we always talk about, Premiere versus Resolve, but there's like for me, Calendly for scheduling meetings or like, just anything like that, or like pitch deck generation, sometimes can be a thing.
We don't do anything like too mind blowing, which is funny. Like one of the things that we did was we did create like a Google spreadsheet between Martin and I, and we kind of created all these categories of different freelance people that we knew, right? Because we try to have like the best team possible, but when somebody does reach out for a job and they say, hey, we need audio guy, we need lighting, we need DIT, we were able to open up that spreadsheet and look at it and go, ooh, who do we have? It has their day rate next to it. It has their contact. It might have a link to their reel. And we kind of have this quick reminder, because I think that there's a lot of times you just forget about people you work with or people that do special categories. Because there might be a job coming up that they go, we want somebody specifically DIT. And it's like, we're pretty run and gun. We can handle DIT ourselves usually, but it's like, oh, we know a DIT person that literally does that full time. They're going to be great to bring in to do this. So having that spreadsheet helped us. That was like a little, I guess, tip that we have. But other than that, it's like pitch decks, things like that. Like I don't really build too many of those. I'll use other videos as references and inspiration. But a lot of the companies that we work with are almost like producing it themselves, and we're coming in to kind of help with with shooting it and working on post and like delivering like their vision. So like I said, we don't really reach out to companies and say, hey, we really want to pitch you on this. We really want to do this job. It's usually somebody has an idea and they come to us.
Right. And with your experience with these kind of higher end companies, we were talking about, I used to work for Red Bull, and when you were talking about like DC kind of being the same thing, I remember you did that. Was it Robbie Madison who did the wave?
Yeah, we shot Madison on the wave. That was crazy.
I legitimately thought that was a Red Bull project until the DC logo came up, and I was like, oh, because he's a Red Bull athlete, so I was like,
totally.
Look at that.
Totally. Well, that says a couple things. I mean, Red Bull's done an amazing job in obviously owning that category and that level of craziness to where if you see it, you automatically think it's Red Bull, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I had a lot of friends even be like, hey man, did you see that video that Red Bull did? And I was like, are you joking? Like I was out there for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That was DC. That was us.
That was a month.
Yeah. So, I mean, for people that don't know, like that's Robbie Madison in Tahiti riding a motorcycle on a wave, which was a mind blowing experience. That was that experience, basically, they brought us in because we're skateboarders. We don't, we don't work around if the lighting's perfect or if we have permission. We're very like if you're out skateboarding and the skateboarder wants to do a trick, you have to be ready. You just have capture. It doesn't matter if the lighting
Pre-record, baby.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter if security's kicking you out or the police are pulling up or the lighting is horrible. Like you have to make it work because the skater is feeling it, right? So they wanted something with Robbie, and they came to us and like, look, we can't hire Hollywood style production people that are going to hold everything up. We need this thing to go. So we need you guys to get in there and just over capture everything and just go with the flow. And we did that, but it was one of those experiences that obviously after it came out, we looked at each other and we're like, if we can do this, we can do anything. And that was really the first like team effort thing that I felt like I was kind of involved in, that I was like, whoa, like it's so rad to have a crew of people that are amazing that working together where, if you're doing a skate video, you're going out and filming a trick. Usually it's just the filmer and the skater, the filmer's the director, the producer, all that stuff. You're telling them what spot we're going to go to. You're filming the trick and then you're figuring out the angles, all that stuff. So this was like, whoa, we have a dream team of people that we didn't even know was a dream team. And they put out this epic video and people think it's Red Bull doing it, but really it was just a bunch of skateboarders. That gave us a lot of confidence.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the sickest things ever. I mean, it's like, it's not surprising that the person, the fully flared was one of the most important videos, Yeah, right. Which I know you didn't work on Yeah, right?
I didn't work on Yeah, right. I was the kid calling the skate shop every day asking if it was in yet. So
yeah. And then, that video, but the point of all that was to say, like, when you work with these higher end companies doing cool shit, what are some of the things that, because a lot of time the client doesn't know what they want, so what are some of the things that you've recognized doing these jobs that when you go to, you get some new client who's like, we just want some of that magic. Like, what are they actually asking for?
Man, I mean, you definitely got it right when you say most of the time they don't know what they want, but that's one of my favorite things is trying to figure out like how to achieve their vision. And usually it's inspiration off something else. It's inspiration on something that we worked on, and that's why we're coming in. It's not like we're gonna hit up to shoot a baseball documentary. Like I've never done that, so that's probably not gonna happen, right? But there's usually some sort of affiliation of like Motion Clubhouse has been involved in something at some capacity, and that's why they're reaching out to us. So we're kind of able to kind of figure it out, and we always like to give things a twist and obviously like elevate it just enough to make it even better or different. But yeah, we usually just try to achieve the vision of the client. That's usually our goal. We enjoy doing that.
Do you find that this is a loaded question. Do you find that there's like technical considerations? We were talking about cameras earlier. Like, has a client ever asked you for a specific camera setup or lighting or a camera platform or lighting thing or lens package or anything like that?
No, it used to be like a lot back in the day was if we got a lot of jobs because we owned a Red. Now people are asking what camera it is. It's pretty crazy. Nowadays people are just like, yeah, whatever, like doesn't even matter. So I definitely saw where it was like, if you have a Red camera getting hired, I haven't had anybody ask me to use a Red camera. We're shooting on Canon, Sony, doesn't matter. For us, the way that we've approached it too is we go, hey, this is our day rate. This is what we charge. That you can get every single thing. Equipment is included. And that's the rate if we're shooting on a Red, and that's the rate if we're shooting on a Canon, and that's the rate if we're shooting on a GoPro. It's all the same amount. You're getting Motion Clubhouse as a whole, and you're getting our experience. Like all the cameras are good now, so I'm not going to sit here and like lower numbers because you're picking what camera body I'm going to use. Like that doesn't matter to me at the end of the day. Like obviously I want to achieve what their goal is, right? We all want to win. So I'm not going to sit there and go, well, I'm not bringing my extra monitor unless you pay that extra $200. Like, no, like you're going to pay us. We're going to bring everything we got. We're going to do this. And producers love that. They love when it's just everything's included. We're easy to work with. If there's something that they want that we don't have, then yeah, let's go out and get that. And obviously have them pay for that because we don't own it. But between Martin, Sam, myself, the people that we're friends with and we bring on jobs, we pretty much own everything that you need.
Yeah. And once like the argument of like, first of all, it's fantastic advice. People, especially when you're working with like non-film clients,
Yeah.
They just want to see a round number and they want to pay by credit card.
Yeah, the biggest the biggest I guess like difference too with leaving a corporate company and starting Motion Clubhouse was the whole, what's your budget? Like going back and forth with clients and trying to figure out what it is that they're going to pay. Because when we were at DC, we were getting paid a salary. So it didn't matter like how much work we were doing, we were always getting paid the same amount of money. It didn't matter if the job lost money, made more money, we were getting paid guaranteed. Now I have people that will be like, oh, I want to do this job. How much is it going to cost? And I'm like, but there's not really any details. And one thing I kind of learned is when that question of like, what's your rate? It's also like, okay, well, we have like base rates for just like shooting. But if you want like for an entire project, it's like, well, what is your budget also? Because then that tells me what can I bring in? How much time can I put into this? Like how big of a crew can we get? If you're telling me that you only have $10,000 to do it, well then like, obviously I know I'm going to shrink down my crew. If you're saying you have 30, I can afford some of the bigger people. I can afford more people and so on. So it's really like, we can do it for cheaper. We can do it for more, but there's going to be a few things that suffer.
Right. And I think something to highlight in what you're saying, because for people who don't know, that might be a little confusing, because you said like we have a flat rate and then budgets change. It's, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think I'm pretty sure we're on the same page here. Budgets dictate how many people you can get on, because you don't own people. You have to pay them. You own the equipment, but you don't own the personnel, and the personnel need to be paid. And so if you have to shrink down the personnel, just stuff physically can't get done with a smaller budget.
Okay. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then nobody's figured it out because nobody's talking about rates with each other. Nobody is telling each other what they get paid. It's not the NBA where LeBron signs a contract and it's like, this is what he's getting and this is what his rate is. It's like, we don't know what each other's rates are.
Yeah.
I think that's actually hurting the filmmakers a little bit more because some people don't know their true value. Yep. I mean, I'd say everybody's undercharging probably in that case.
Well, and I think it's because people don't, like, it's kind of a weird double-edged sword, right? Because if I tell a film student just graduated, hey, average day rate for a DP right now is, somewhere between 1,200 and 1,800, and they start charging that, and they don't have any experience, they don't have any equipment, they don't, that's not good, because you're going to do that kid a disservice. They're going to eat shit very quickly.
Yeah. Because that's a good point, because my day rate today obviously isn't what it was 5 years ago.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely a tough one, but like, it's not something that and again, I didn't go to film school. So I want to say it's not something that isn't taught in film school, because I don't know, but
it's not. Haven't been taught that. Yeah. They don't tell you there either. Well, the whole point was, I was just thinking like, it's good to know what the average is, because there's and what I'll do is I'll just go into the what is it, the union book. There's like a website you can find all the union rates and just look at that and go, all right, I'll pay that.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
There's just massive charts, and it'll tell you like, based on what budget. And of course, everything is like, the lowest budget for the union is like 250,000 or something like that. But I'll just pick those numbers because that's average, and then if someone's higher or lower, you figure that out. If someone's way low and I know they deserve it, I'll be like,
Yeah. And as people start to do, like, as you start to work with companies and you're in the same industry, it's like a good example is the podcast industry, right? So if like we fell into the podcast space, wasn't really planned. And we started to kind of learn the rates as we started to see what people were paying. So we're like, okay, cool. Like for this job, they're asking for this. So we now have kind of like a rate set based off of these requests. And then you can kind of go off that and go, okay, well, this client's asking for something similar, but it's a little bit less. You kind of know how to adjust the numbers and kind of like set the ballparks. But that's a lot of work to do. And that's something that like I wasn't really having to handle again at DC, because it was like, cool, you're hired. This is what you're getting per year. Everybody, had their salary. But with this, you're kind of like having to figure out like what you're going to charge clients, how to charge more as a company as well, because you have company expenses. So it's a whole different kind of like a mind game of trying to figure out like, oh man, how are we going to do this?
Well, and I think one simple thing that really helped me out when trying to, because, especially if you're trying to be nice. I think there's something within every artist that makes them not want to charge people, quote unquote, too much.
Well, because they're passionate about it. Because you don't want to not do the job. Like you obviously want to do it, and you're in this industry because you're excited about it, right? But you still want to get your worth. You still have to make a living. So that's the hard part, is that you don't want to overcharge because you're like, I don't want to not be doing this.
Well, and there's this kind of weird, I feel there's this kind of weird cultural thing where filmmaking, whatever, anything in that space, any art form is not a quote real job and therefore deserves less for whatever reason. And that I completely disagree with, especially when, if you're working with, Ford and they're like, we need a commercial, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I'll do it for, no, charge them. But the thing that really helped me out on it for like realizing what my rates should be, A, that union sheet, B, just looking at a rental house and seeing what my gear is going out for these days, and then C, creating a spreadsheet of my monthly expenses.
That's huge.
It's really, suddenly you're like, I need to be making 10 grand a month, and that number doesn't sound so crazy when you see it in front of you. You're like, oh, that's why my credit card's angry,
Absolutely.
And it's, you're at that point, I find it much easier to tell people like, this is what I need to, it's not even what you're worth, it's what you need to be paid. And a lot of times, once you break a threshold, companies just go, all right. It's the companies that haggle that always.
Yeah, I think it's building those relationships too, and just being like showing your value and showing the trust. You know what I mean? It's like you don't have to be you could be the best filmmaker in the world, but like they got to trust you. They've got to be able to rely on you. So it's like it goes a lot of ways, and there's a lot of producers are going to be like, you know what, I want to work with you out of anybody because you gave a lot of passion during the last project, and you're familiar with our brand, and we want to keep this going. So it's like people should want to work with you, and it's okay to have those discussions. I think they should be a little bit more open of like, look, I need to make some more money. I need to charge more. Last time we did this, I actually lost money over here in this space. So how can we adjust this and do this? And most of the time they'll be like, oh, you know what? That makes sense. Let's figure this out. So having discussions has helped us.
Yeah. Do you, nope, that thought. I'm trying to stop myself from just going totally agree, and then not having a pivot point.
Let's find something we disagree on.
Yeah, grapes. I did want to know, going back to the fully flared thing, because if no one's seen it, it is one of the most impressive skate videos of all time. What did you spend any time with Spike Jonze?
No, so I didn't spend any time with Spike. I was basically the NorCal filmer. So I was filming Brandon Bebo a lot, but then what was happening was a lot of the team writers would come up to Sacramento, and we would film a ton up there. And that's how I just got to film Costin and Guy Mariano and Mike Carroll, Ricardo, all those guys. So I was like,
Mike Carroll.
Yeah, I got to film like all my childhood heroes in a video that I was more excited about than probably anybody else in the world. Like, and Ty Evans, my favorite filmmaker and skateboarding of all time, is the guy who taught me how to film. I'd send him the footage. He would give me notes, tell me what to do. I didn't know how to set white balance or anything on my camera when he hired me. That guy he gave me the opportunity that nobody else would. And because I worked for him and because I worked for Fully Flared, I was able to get any job I wanted after that point.
What cameras were you using back then? Were those DV?
Yeah, Sony VX1000. So it's like the most iconic camera in skateboarding of all time. And I just would turn it on and go, and he's like, hey man, it's looking really orange. You gotta do this, you gotta do that. And like, when you're filming here, fish, I do this. So he put a lot of trust in me, where there's a million people out there that were better than me at this and would have wanted that job. And I got extremely lucky working with Ty, and is still good friends with him still today.
Did you, it's funny now that I'm thinking about it. Did you ever go to the St. Helena skate park?
I don't think so.
So I grew up there. Okay. And I can't remember how, but we basically petitioned the city. Now there's like an insanely good one that Walker. I wouldn't say he's my friend. He's my acquaintance. We know each other.
Ryan?
Yeah.
Oh, he's friends with everybody.
Yeah.
Forever.
But he grew up, same schools and all that. And great,
Napa.
yep, in Napa. Great author now. He got them to make, I think it was him, got them to make like a really nice skate park now. There's a big, nice concrete one. But before it was just like a fenced in, like 20 by 20, like, uh, not even concrete, just like that pebble asphalt with some wood things, and then a massive half pipe. At least it was massive when I was there. I was 12. But Billy Pepper would show up all the time to like break the lock or something. I don't know if he worked there, but he was constantly skating that half pipe, and I thought that was the coolest. That's a real skater.
Isn't.
Yeah, Northern California is fun. All right, well, we're kind of coming up on time. I don't know what else to talk about now. Oh, how many? No, I guess that's kind of the same question. I was going to say, how many Transworld videos did you shoot? Because that was another big one.
Yeah, I mean, I went from Lakai to Transworld, and that was another dream job of mine. And I want to say I was there for 4 to 5 years. So we did like 4 to 5 videos. And then yeah, I was working in Transworld because it was a magazine. I worked with everybody in the industry. So I got to film every skater, work with every company, help book the travel, worked with John Holland on all those videos, which is I grew up watching him and Ty Evans make all the Transworld videos. So I got to experience what it was like to work with Ty and then work with John, which they were complete opposite people, but it was a great balance where it's like Ty was this more like, I don't want to say it was like a drill sergeant, but he was definitely like a we're gonna get this done no matter what. Where John was a lot more laid back and was like, let's not approach it that way. So it kind of helped me landed right here in the middle where it was like, okay, cool. I can be this like drill sergeant to the guys that need it and want it. But then I'm like, I can also be like laid back and back off to the guys that don't work well that way.
Yeah. You know what? That actually brings up a great thing we can end on, which is what makes a good video part.
Well, the skateboarding at the end of the day, it's not the filming. It's not the editing. It's truly the skateboarding is what matters. It's obviously the skater style. It's what they skate, how they skate. And most of the people that are watching skate videos are not watching the filming like we might be, where I'm sitting there watching all the filming the whole time. But a skateboarder is watching it for the skateboarding. So what makes you want to go skate? That's what makes the best skate video.
Yeah. I'm actually, that's something that we were talking about a little bit earlier about like you make something that you want to post on your own thing. I was telling that to a friend of mine who's like a marketer for this company that we both work for. Well, they work for it like officially, and they're not getting a lot of engagement on their posts. And I'm like, you're not making anything that I would want to send my friends.
Yeah.
Like, stop making ads.
Yeah.
No one shares ads, People share, just think like, is this something I would send to my friends on Instagram? If yes, you're good.
Yep. Exactly.
But I did want to drill down on the skate part a little bit because there is, skateboarding is very insular, clicky, particular. If you just shoot a skate part and in any way, it'll stand out. Not in like necessarily in a good way. People will be like, well, what the hell is it? Because there's a certain visual language to skate films that I think, just like in any movie, if you shoot, the horror film like a rom-com, unless to your point, unless the content fits that visual, not dichotomy, but, whatever this is, not where, not different.
There's a lot of rules. There's a ton of rules, but there's no skate film school. And there's nobody that's ever even talked about. I bet you it's not even on YouTube. Like, here's the rules of skate filmmaking. Like nobody has done. I've never seen that before because there's a lot of rules and there's no rules. So it's like it's complete freedom, but don't do the wrong thing. But I can't tell you what the rules are. You should know. And for anybody out there that doesn't skate, you can't just like walk into skateboarding and be like, hey guys, I'm gonna film skating. Here I am. They're gonna be like, no, you're not. We don't know you. Like. You gotta like click with them. They gotta trust you. Like you're traveling with these people. You're rooming with 4 or 5 people on a trip. Like it's a completely different world. To me, it's normal, But to see like the non-skateboarder come in and be like, oh, we're going to do this. And to see a non-skateboarder edit a skate video, you're like, oh, whoa, like you can't do that. And they're like, what? I'm like, you just can't. You have to be able to see the ground and the top of the stairs the whole time, things like that. So it's like I said, a lot of rules, no rules. That's it.
Well, and you know what it is? This is going to be the craziest like comparison, but it's like high-end cocktail or restaurant stuff. It's like, how do you get a Michelin star? It's like, well, you have to be making food or drinks or whatever. It's an ongoing conversation with everyone else on the playing field, but it is a silent conversation. One person does one thing, you go, oh, that's interesting, and then you one up. Nothing happens in a vacuum. It's the same thing with skate films. It's like the way you know is by watching all the other skate films. Well, isn't that copying? No, because you got to do your own thing. But it's like it's the ship of Sisyphus. You know, it's like it just is now. And if you want to be a part of it, just slot yourself in wherever it is.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, man. You know, like I never, I got into it and just thought I'm making skate videos with my friends. This is crazy that we can do this. We don't need anything else. And then when companies were like, hey, we're going to pay you to film these pros, we're going to pay you to travel the world, like it just didn't make any sense to me. It just seemed like too good to be true. I didn't know you can do this for a living. And then to see where else it's led myself to is shocking. You know, every single thing I do, skateboarding or not, like skateboarding has some sort of inspiration behind it of what I'm doing today.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a great job, buddy. I'm gonna let you go, but thanks for I'm glad we can finally get your episode out 160 episodes later.
Let's say this was one of the best podcast interviews I've had because your questions were a lot different. I feel like I always talk about the same stuff, and this was a completely different style where if anybody went back and watched my last 5 podcast interviews I've done, you'll literally hear the exact same phrases word by word in answers. And so this one was a lot different. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that, man. That's literally been my goal with this thing is like everyone's on a press tour usually. And it's like, I just listen to if I'm lucky enough and they've already done those interviews, I'll just listen to them and not talk about that.
Yeah, no, I really told somebody the other day, I was just like, I got to figure out how to switch these up. And yeah, you did it for me. So appreciate it,
buddy. Appreciate you. All right. Well, I'll, whatever. I'll text you whenever.
Awesome.
Later, dude.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production, produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to frameandrefpod.com and clicking on the Patreon button. It's always appreciated, and as always, thanks for listening.